All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna try it all over again, my friends. They won't see the last one anyway because I'm going to delete it. Hey, Dr. L, I don't know, man. Like I said, they were trying to stop us, but I want to make sure that you're on YouTube. But we were streaming. We were live on Facebook. I hope you're live over here on my Instagram. So hey, everything was good. And all of a sudden, I get this little sticky. I said, no, but we live and we're in the house, and I'm gonna try it over again. Dr. L. Brown, how you doing tonight?
I am wonderful. Thank you for having me.
I tell you what, with that vibe that you give me with that live smile, I know everything's gonna be all right. We just got the green light that we're definitely live on YouTube. So hey, my friends, the reason why we stopped and went back in again, I got to make sure that the whole world out there will get a shot to know what this incredible young lady, I'm going to say, is like tonight. She's got a story that will tell you that against all odds, you can make it happen. When I stop the music, we make it official. So tonight, I'm going to say, hey, once again, I thank you so much for being here with us. You are just my pleasure beyond reason. We have so much in common. Dr. L. Brown, what is your why for being here with me tonight? Welcome to the GG Factor on this Tuesday night. Guess what? The first Tuesday in February, Black History Month. And I got one. Who else would I want to start off the month of February with other than legendary, the ambassador, the advocate, Dr. L. Brown? How you doing?
I am wonderful. And my why, the reason why I do what I do, the way I do it with the people that I'm for, it's because I believe that every child deserves to be loved and cared for well and should have the opportunity to maximize their personal potential. And they need
absolutely
to help them do that.
Wow. And that's a reason enough for living. So you have a doctorate in early childhood education. Am I correct on that, right?
Correct.
Where did you get that doctorate?
At George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia.
So how about your undergraduate studies?
My undergraduate started at the Florida A&M University in Tallahassee.
It's kind of funny. We were relating to your son, Ricky, who's a Rattler now. And I never really got a confirmation that you were a Rattler yourself, So when I heard right before we had to get disconnected and come back in, I heard you say it. I said, that's some new knowledge to me. I was curious about just when I did ask you also, were you a native of Tallahassee? You told everyone so we can get back to speed that you were born and raised in Ocala, Florida. And I can relate to that time. I felt like I almost lived there. I went through coming back and forth to Tampa, Florida for 4 years to Tallahassee, Florida. That's the intersection. That's where you leave I-4, you take 27 and you're on your way to Tallahassee, And the only little town, what is it, Perry, Florida, about the only one that's on the way there?
Right. Used to be when we take 27. Yeah.
Right. No doubt. So, hey, listen, it's so much to talk about tonight with you. As I said in the earlier broadcast, since we are live now, and maybe if those missed it the first time around, we'll just have to have a repeat performance. We met at the NHSA, that's the National Head Start Association in Orlando, Florida, where I was so honored to see you as the keynote speaker. And I was honored myself to be there, invited as a 90-minute workshop presenter. And man, what a wonderful time. And I'll tell you, 60 years of Head Start. I know that you were discovered. I'm going to say it like this. They found that the genius would come to play and greatness would manifest itself when little L. Brown was only about 5 or 6 years old. She was in Head Start, and somebody recognized that you had something special going on. See, I did a little work about you, So I said to myself, what made me think about that? When I was a kid like you, and I was in 2nd grade, and I went to Progress Village Elementary in Tampa. Miss McLeod, you don't forget your teachers. You don't forget your coaches. You can forget all kind of other teachers, but there's certain teachers and coaches you just don't forget. And same thing that happened for me. You say, wait a minute, Gregory, you reading like, you don't need to be in here with these 2nd graders. And Dr. L, they took me over to read with the 5th graders. They took me over and had me reading and from that point on, every time reading came up, they done it so. And you told me how you read something in the Acorn story. You read something I read in the Acorn story that wasn't. You read a poem or you read something, and someone said, "Wait a minute, no, L, you're not going to stay here." And I think that was the beginning of, like you said, your level of self-esteem about yourself It's never been the same. Someone told you that a girl that looked like you come from a place where you come from a little small town could be, guess what? Dr. L. Brown. So,
Yeah.
I mean, right before we introduced you the last time, I let you do it, and you did it the same way this time, little settle, a little laid back. Come on, Dr. L. Nobody can tell me what it feels like, but you, that you shook hands with Michelle Obama. You were invited to the White House. You met Oprah Winfrey on the Oprah Winfrey Show. You were literally voted and honored as the military spouse of the year for the Army. Woo! That's why I say your legacy is already set, sister. I'm sorry, it's not too much. And then you've taught in 3 countries, 16 states in the U.S. of A. Was it South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. of A?
Yes, those.
Wow, you got to tell us a little bit about what did you notice about those cultures and the heterogeneous nature of that, the diversity of it all. How did that happen? How did that come about? I want you to just tell us all about that. Tell us about those 3 things we talked about: Oprah, okay, Michelle Obama, and being what spouse of the year. 3 countries, 16 states. I'm gonna shut up now because you got a lot to unfold for us right now. I'm gonna sip my tea and say, please talk to me.
Well, it really does all play into each other. After FAMU, I graduated and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. And
Okay.
I quickly learned that on a teacher's salary, I could not pay my rent and my car payment in the same check. So
Mm-hmm.
I snuck out doing a teacher's work day, and I went to a Black Enterprise career fair. And while waiting in line, because I thought I was going to go back to get my MBA, a young lady who was representing the Department of Defense Education Activity, I went to have a chat with her because they had recruited me from FAMU to go to Japan. And so when I struck up a conversation with the young lady, Miss Cheryl Lomax Surratt, she was like, if we've recruited you once, we will want you again. If
Ah,
you're not happy in teaching, try teaching overseas. It's resource friendly. She told me all the perks. And I went and got my transcript. And a few months later, I was on my first plane ride ever from Atlanta, Georgia to Tokyo, Japan. And I
wow.
went there to teach second grade. And when I got there, I quickly realized that as interested as I was in teaching, I was more interested in families. And everyone there seemed to have a family. It was, a wife, a husband, 2.5 kids, because everyone on the naval base is pregnant. And I
Okay.
decided at that point I wanted 4 kids, 2 dogs, and a white picket fence, and I was going to do it.
I
Well,
hear you.
there was a aircraft carrier there called the Kitty Hawk. It had 5,000 men on it, and your girl couldn't find one, not one. So, what did I do? I took a transfer to an army base. And on that army base, I actually did meet and marry a soldier. And
Uh-huh.
I ended my career in South Korea teaching in traditional sense. And I moved to become a stay at home wife in the United States. And later, after Ricky Two's birth, a stay at home mom. Um, when he was about 17 months, my soldier was in Iraq, and I was noticing that there was no language in the house. So I took him to a pediatrician. I was
Hmm.
asking the pediatrician, like, this is what I think, this is what I saw. And the man looked at me, looked at my child, gave him a well baby visit that took about 15 minutes, and then gave me a SpongeBob sticker and
Mm.
told me, good job, mom, you have a healthy baby boy. I got
Wow.
into the car and I felt just a myriad of emotions because um,
You didn't
I
believe
felt
that, obviously.
outnumbered.
Yeah, you
Exactly.
didn't. You didn't believe that. You're dealing with a kid with developmental delays, and someone telling you different. You know what? You said it just now. I didn't want to interrupt you. I wanted to make sure I was following you
Mhm.
correctly. You didn't see the normal pattern of development in your son, and you say something wrong. You take him to someone. They tell you he's okay, and
Right.
you knew contrary to that. But before we segue all the way to Ricky, let's go back here. So I've just got some more of the whole story now.
Okay.
So all of the majority of your years as a teacher were in the foreign countries versus
Yes.
the United States.
Yes, that's correct. I have
Wow.
a company in the United States, and I've spent 17 years with Kinder Jam, but I taught for a total of 7 years in the traditional classroom setting, 2 in the US and 5 overseas.
So you only did 7 years of teaching, and and at present you're the CEO of Kinder Jam.
Right. So I've taught on the university level. I've operated preschool. So I've taught, but just not in the traditional sense of a classroom teacher that goes into a school.
Correct. Because you're a doctor and a professor on the collegiate level, I ain't mad at you. Not at all. But you know something? Thank you for sharing that, because there were some hidden obscurities in what's up with her. There was some hidden obscurities in what this sister not telling me. And now we got the whole story. So before we went too far ahead of ourselves, because I want you to really micromanage and really give them the story about our friend Ricky, the guy that was the etiology of all the things that happened for you while you got a doctorate in early childhood education. Right. So now you fast forward. So you've been to South Korea, you've been to Japan. Yes. You're back here now. You're a stay-home mom. You're blessed that you can be a stay-home mom and you can monitor what's going on with your son. And all of a sudden, you notice there's something's not in the stages of development. That's why they call it developmental delays. Everybody's not an ESC like you and I. They may not even refer or concur with us and understand the jargon, what we're speaking about. So now let's move forward. And then what happened? What was that light in the fire for you that you left that doctor? No, he didn't tell you the truth. So what happened after that?
Well, again, my son had characteristics of developmental delay. And after taking him there, I thought, what would I do if I were in the classroom? I would teach, evaluate, assess, and refer. I didn't have that infrastructure in our home, so I created it. My son loved music. I could tell he was communicating with me through his voice intonations. They sound like my own. And he loved movement. So I decided to do kinesthetic and tactile music and movement activities with him and collect data points. And I took those data points back to his pediatrician. And then instead of going from a place of I think and I feel, I went from knowing and data. And then I said, based on what I've seen, I would like a referral to a speech pathologist. And if the speech pathologist says there's nothing going on, then I'll leave it alone for now. We went to the speech pathologist, and there was indeed a delay in his language development. And that then began my service provider dance, where I'm going back and forth. Them telling me what they think, I'm telling them what I know because I'm at home, a teacher by trade, and I'm collecting data. So eventually, I decided to reach out to Stanford University, and I told them that, my name's Elle Brown. I need someone to put eyes on my child. And they sent me the different assessments to give to the preschool, the doctor, to do at home. And after a 6-hour behavioral assessment, my son, Ricky, too, was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and I was moon excited.
And what age is this ASD? When was that diagnosed? How old was he then?
He was 4 years, 5 months.
Okay. When is his birthday?
September 20th, 2 days before mine.
That's my sister's birthday.
Really?
Amazing. Yeah, my sister Linda. Maru, did you hear that? Wow, small world. That's all right, man. Well, listen. So at 4.5 years old, he's still not speaking at this point.
Right, he's not speaking at this point.
So, and you spoke about kinesthetic, that tactile, hands-on way.
Let me clarify that. Yeah. He had what you call echolalia. So he would say words. So let's say Arby's was one of his favorite words. So he would say Arby's, Arby's, Arby's. He would say touchdown. But when he came to receptive and expressive language, to have conversations, to tell his needs, wants, desires, and thoughts, he did have a vocabulary about 40 words.
Got it. So now we're going to move forward, and you had a breakthrough when constructive communication was an awareness, something that happened, a light bulb went on. Okay, how did that happen? When did that happen? And what do you most attribute that to? Of course, a lot of it is God. A lot of it is just spirit just saying this is the time. But tell us about that. So Ricky goes from birth to 4.5 years old, not speaking, but using echolalia, as you say. I don't know pronouncing that word correctly, but I've heard it a million times and I know what you're referring to. But he did have a way of saying things that he heard a lot, just echoing them. And so now, when was the breakthrough? When did you say, hey, Rick, and he said, what you want, mama?
Well, the funny thing was when he finally did start speaking, he would punctuate all of his sentences with the word huh. Because I
Uh-huh.
would always include him in conversations. I would say, "Oh, you like that, huh? Oh, would you want some more, huh? Oh, red's your favorite color, huh?" So when he
Uh-huh.
finally did start talking, he would say, "Mommy, I love you, huh?" He would say everything was punctuated with huh.
Yes,
That's what
yes.
I use. But his breakthrough in language happened very subtly. It wasn't
Uh-huh.
by the time he was in second grade,
Yeah.
you could understand him without trying as hard.
Okay.
Because one of the things about the language development, because he was going through speech therapy and such, is
Yeah.
that even when he wanted to communicate, the way the words came out may not have been the way people would easily understand. And
Correct.
now, as a
Correct.
19-year-old, he told me at 18, Mom, my mouth stutters, but my brain doesn't. So he let me
Oh.
know that through that whole time, he
And
saw
you
the
got to repeat that
words.
again. I love what you just said. When I hear something that's golden, he said my mouth
Mouth
stutters, but
stutters,
my
my
brain.
brain doesn't. And so
So
my
I
18-year-old
say
didn't
this
have
too. When you were talking about assess and reteach, I call it the triple R thing. You remediate, then there's retention, and then Dr. L, there's recall. It
Mhm,
sounded to me that you found things with Ricky that you knew worked, and all of a sudden, there was a clear paradigm shift.
mhm.
Clear.
So with that, what I noticed, the aha moment for me really didn't have
Yes.
anything to do with my son. The
Uh-huh.
aha moment had something to do with other families because before being a military spouse, I was a DoD teacher overseas. So I
Okay.
understood that military families did not have the luxury of continuity of care because they move every 2 to 3 years,
Exactly.
sometimes even more frequently than that.
Yeah.
And here I was, a stay at home mom with the skill set of a teacher, talking to service providers. And I first took my little one in at 17 months. And I didn't receive a diagnosis until 4 years, 5 months. So I was like, well, if this is what I'm experiencing, with
Somebody else.
around what might other families be experiencing.
Yes.
That's how Kinderjam started. Kinderjam was
Ah.
actually a military program through the Child, Youth, and School Services. And so I would then offer this Mommy and Me class for parents and children on the military
Huh.
installation so they could have deliberate practice working with their children. And I served as a second set of eyes as an auntie. So I would notice things,
Wow.
I would say things, I would give them language that they could use when they would ask questions. So
Yes.
that's really how Kinder Jam started. It was my gift to others because Ricky Two's time is what it was called when I did it in my home. So Kinder Jam was my gift to other families.
Oh man, that is. Thank you for so much clarification there, because I want to ask, what was the etiology of Kinder Jam? When you started running this top-notch village, as you called it in your bio, and how you were able to create this framework for education now because you were giving back.
Right. And
You
so
were giving
what
back.
in
You were recognizing a need. You saw it, and then let's face it. You're in a very unique cohort. You're in this place where it's all
Mhm,
military. Everybody's in this bubble, and once you discovered what was going on, God bless you for what you did. Because look at the help. Look at the blessing you were to so many. I mean
mhm.
that and then you come back here, and when I heard you say it, was it 16 states that you were able? Were these all like a lot of universities, or what was
So
most of the work done in those states?
Well,
Were you
so to explain the structure, KinderJam was a licensing program. So other
okay?
military spouses who were also stay-at-home moms who had the training of teachers, they would then be trained by me and my cohorts, and then they would take our program to various places. So we went to 16 states and 11 countries via KinderJam business owners, people that I trained, and then they went and
You
taught my
set
curriculum.
them up.
hmm And so
Yes.
really how I then ended up at the White House because Michelle Obama and Dr. Biden at the time had an initiative called Joining Forces. And it was really
Uh-huh.
about, making sure that military spouses, had continuity professionally. Because when you would go from school,
Okay.
you wouldn't have
Oh.
and license. So what Kinder Jam did was create fulfilling mobile careers for military spouses. So those young ladies didn't suffer a gap in their career because they were able to be entrepreneurs. And when they went back into the workforce, a principal could call me and I could say, well, yes, she's done teaching experience, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But that's how
Oh,
I White
a
House.
beautiful domino effect. This
Mhm.
is so nice. Well, man, wow. Like I said, I know you remember the old guy, Paul Harvey. He used to be on the radio all the time. I'm dating myself back, but he would tell things and say things. And then all of a sudden he would say, now the whole story. And what you've just shared right now is just, it is literally, I mean, phenomenal. I mean, wow. So you're truly a pioneer. Your legacy is notched in stone from, I mean, from local cities and states all the way to our federal government.
Mhm.
What was it like to meet, encounter, have a couple of moments? Because I truly love Michelle Obama. I
Uh,
love Oprah. I met Oprah as an entertainer. My sister Ruby Baker is an entertainer. We were performing at this five-star hotel in Fort Lauderdale Beach. And
mhm.
Oprah, Maya Angelou, her boyfriend, her stepman, they came into the club where we were performing.
Right.
And this lady, her name is Barbara King, who's a minister in Atlanta. I don't know if you ever heard of Barbara King or not, but she was there. We just happened to meet them. We hung out. So I can say, and I had some interactions with Oprah. My sister took pictures and all that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
all I've ever done beyond that, as far as Michelle Obama, is just admire her immensely. Because
Mhm.
when I watched her documentary the other night and I was thinking about you, and I say, wow, she had an opportunity to meet this extraordinary human being, and I'm sure that was a permanent imprint. Tell us just a little bit about that. The fact now that it came up through your relationship with the military, and
Mhm.
I mean, are you able to still reach out to her? Are you still able to have
Yeah.
communication?
I was serving as the Army Spouse of the Year at the time. So
Wow.
I was there representing the Army. Um,
Yes.
the invitation was such that we were celebrating the 1 year anniversary of the Joining Forces Initiative.
Got you.
Mrs. Obama, she's very personable and she's very down to earth. I remember just in our brief encounter that I'm not one for self promotion. I let the works that I do speak for me.
Yeah.
And my soldier, however, wanted to tell all of the great things that I had done.
Hmm.
And she stopped and said, well, but are you helping with the laundry? So and I really appreciated that because yeah, I need help with the laundry. So someone to take a moment like that and to make it personable, you know,
Right.
like okay, I get all the accolades, but are
Yeah.
you helping your wife at home? Because
Yeah.
that's really why we're here to make sure that military spouses have sustainable lives, and you helping out at home will help sustain her life. So I appreciate
Exactly.
that.
That is great, man. Well, thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
I didn't realize that we've already been at this. Well, actually, this is 23 minutes now, but we had already kicked in about 4 or 5 minutes. But I always give an unconditional plug about the GG Factor every Tuesday night. But also, I always like to talk to people about people like you and give them an opportunity to understand that you're living what I call Dr. L. Brown, the P3 theory. I know your son has a P3 theory that I was looking at with, passion and what was it? Purpose. And it was another one there. I wrote it down and I wanted to relate to it about Ricky because my P3 is passion, purpose, and possibility.
Mhm.
And you have such I mean, just relentless passion for education, a relentless passion for those who are disabled, those with autism, those who were like Ricky. So what I try to do is offer people the opportunity to find their pain points on Thursday nights. I have my Strive Masterclass every Thursday night. I'm always offering opportunity to get into my Get Activated community. Decided that even through the month of this February, I'm going to run a special for people. It's normally $97 a month. You come into my camp, you get this book this month that's about to be a new release. I released this book over 20 years ago, got out of it, and then respectfully, A year ago, I introduced, well, it was about 2 years ago, I introduced myself back with this book. Both of these books, while I was a full-time teacher, I was able to do them. And I tell people, you can do more, you can be more. It's focus, focus, focus. So my Strive Masterclass is about that. It's about finding your pain points, finding the place where you can activate your true identity, define yourself and be a better version of yourself. And this young lady I'm talking to tonight, I mean, because I know you got so much more work to do. I say, young lady, respectfully to you for that reason, not being facetious, because your work, you're still just on the way up, but you're a testimonial.
Boom.
That if you find something where there's passion and purpose and you knock on the door, the universe will give you possibilities. So my Thursday night class, you go to theactivator.net. You click the Stripe link, you get in for $49.99. If you take my 30, 60, 90-day challenge, I give everyone another month free. That's 4 months of coaching, 4 months of consultation, 4 months of finding how you can take a self-assessment of yourself in your mind, body, and spirit and determine where am I versus where I want to be. So I'm offering that every Thursday night. Come on out to the Strive Masterclass. But I'm going to get back to business right now with you because I want to, let's focus once again. I want to go back to Ricky.
Okay.
Because we stopped Ricky at elementary school now, and we stopped Ricky with you discovering what was going on with him. But tell us about just the things that happened, the light bulbs that came on, that now, as we sit here speaking right now, your son is a freshman in college at our alma mater, Florida A&M University, FAMU. Your son is in the Marching 100, where I was a rattler there, and in the Marching 100 playing trumpet myself, thanks to my brother, Nelson Griffith, who was my father figure. Dr. L. Brown, I never met my father until I was 50 years old. I'm a child of the 50s. And when I was 6 years old, my brother went away to college. It's 12 years between us. He was 18 years old. And I said to myself, well, if Nelson can go to college, I'm going to go to college. I realized Nelson went to FAMU. I'm going to FAMU. Nelson got into Marching 100, and I'd already heard him and hear him all the time around the house playing his trumpet. Right. He went to Middleton High School in Tampa. I went to Middleton High School. I was forced to go to Lato High in 12th grade. But here's the point. I never thought about becoming a teacher. Always just wanted to be an entrepreneur. And here's the point I want to make about FAMU, being a rattler, being in a position where I didn't have a father, but I had a father figure, and I had my father in heaven. And for some reason, I was 50 years old, and I met my biological father, William Hill Hammond. He lived to be 87 years old, and it's been a little over, or about this summer would be 12 years ago that he made his transition. But you know something? You cannot stop genes. You cannot stop the genetic code. You cannot stop things that were already there. But one thing that will always take the place of all of that is environment, role models, people who are around you. So we're going to say this right now. You did something, you and your husband, for Ricky. And it sounded to me like it was a lot of you because you said your husband was away in the military on a serving over there, and you just had to be there, be mom, and at the same time be like daddy. And boy, just knowing that you were able to do that, Dr. Brown, and that I can almost imagine when you saw your son walk on that campus as a freshman. I'm sure you had to reminisce back. Share with us from the moment that you realized that he was musically inclined. He loved to draw. All those things that you knew were the self-esteem builders and the foundation that helped him become who he is right now. Tell us all about that. When did it finally kick in that you saw him drawing up? When did he finally learn to play an instrument?
Okay. For that, I'll tell the story, and I'll take you back to school where I left off. So when Ricky 2 was in elementary school, I was looking for his passions. I call myself a treasure hunter because what we call floor time. And floor time is a therapy. Unlike ABA, it teaches to teach from the inside out. So you find a child's interests, and then you use their interests as mediums to teach them other skills. My son's interest was music, so I always put him in music activities, and I always put him in art activities. When he was in elementary school, he was in the band. And his band teacher actually noticed, that he could play music by ear. He played like the Star Wars theme song, and it was Mr. Carr who gave him a euphonium. He played that instrument through elementary school and into middle school. Um,
Okay.
in middle school, I then enrolled him at Florida A&M University's band camp, and that was in 2021. And
Mm.
after his first day at band camp, he came home and he told me, because I was here in Tallahassee with him as well, he said,
Yes.
Mom, I think I was born to go to FAMU. And I told him, I said, well, you have to make good grades because FAM's a really competitive school. And that started the journey that most people know now. From the
Yes.
time he left here in 2021, he just didn't stop. And we came back every year for band camp. He would get skills. He took them back to his high school. He was in marching band for 4 years there, culminated with him serving as a drum major, graduating with honors, National Honor Society, English Honor Society. Um,
Wow.
he had the
A nonverbal child.
yes, yes, yes,
I
the
want to
music.
keep reminding our viewers, our listeners, and people who will get this later, a nonverbal child who had a mama that refused to accept that, who got a misdiagnosis, a mother who said, no, I don't think so. I think he deserves better. A mother who said, I think there's the next level. A mother who said that I think I can create a different kind of paradigm in my child's mind. And wow.
Boom. Well, he was never misdiagnosed. He did
Okay.
receive the correct diagnosis. It was just delayed. He could have gotten it earlier because he
Mm-hmm.
completely missed
Oh, you
early.
say the first doctor didn't do
Right.
he didn't.
He didn't. So Ricky too did not receive a diagnosis. He did not receive an assessment until he was
Mm-hmm.
4 years, 5 months.
Got
But
it.
the diagnosis that he received was indeed correct of autism spectrum disorder. But he stands as an example of when you find a passion, and
Yes.
was able to operate within that, they
Yes.
can maximize their personal potential. And the reason why I say their personal potential, because each child is potential to do what that child is potential to do.
That
They're
is right.
they're destined to do. So I now do work in top-notch villages because of the experience that I had with Ricky 2 in curating his ecosystem so that everyone who had access to my child understood the mission.
Exactly. You see, you were able to, you were just blessed. You were blessed to be a stay-home mom. You were blessed that he was able to be in an environment where music was all around, and
Mhm.
it was just a trigger, just a positive trigger. It just kept feeding him. And to go to that summer camp, with this was were you all you all in Tallahassee, or where were you living?
Well, let me clarify. You
Yeah,
said I was blessed to be a stay-at-home mom. God gave me what I needed in the seasons that I needed. I was a
boom,
stay-at-home mom up until the time that Ricky too went into kindergarten. Thereafter, I reclaimed my independence and I
yes,
operated as a single mother. That allowed me to use whatever pedagogy I felt was best, every parent's strategies that I felt was best in the household. So when I received the PhD, well, earned the PhD, and I built the business, I was doing that as a single mother of a child on the autism spectrum.
wow, that is incredible. I'm so proud of you in this
Thank
Black History Month, Miss L. Brown. I'm just so proud of you, Dr. L. Brown, that you said against all odds. And I always kind of sing it and shout it out. We fall down, but we get up. Let me tell you something, boy. I know we all know what you had to go through to get to. And for you to see your son, a freshman, honor society, 3.9 GPA, woo!
Yes. And so,
Giving me chills right now because I know the odds weren't in your favor.
right. And
I
so
know
that,
there were plenty of times you were trying to figure it all out, and one of my parents, and I'll just say RG for the sake of her name and
oh,
all of that. But she had two autistic sons, one only a year from apart,
mhm,
and she was a full-time teacher. She did exactly what you done. RG left the school system. Her husband was a teacher too.
mhm,
And she vowed, my son will learn, my son will be what he's supposed to be.
mhm,
And to this day now, one of them still is nonverbal, but the other one went right into the mainstream, just like your Ricky
mhm,
too, man. And when I hear your story, and I know what my hands-on experience has been like with that, Like one of my autistic kids, his name is Gregory. Believe it or not, small world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Gregory and Gregory would hang out. And during COVID-19, his name is Gregory, and him being an autistic kid, but very articulate. Him being an autistic kid, but his retention and recall was incredible. He had his cognitive deficits, but they were not setbacks. They were nothing but setups, doctor. And let me tell you something, during COVID-19, when we were putting a lot of emphasis on what was going on with our administration, what was going on with the legislative, the executive, the judicial government. Gregory Tavares learned all the branches of the government. He brought a puppet. He brought a puppet over onto to the stage. Maru, bring me my puppet. I want to show her what I had to do.
And
this man brought a puppet to the classrooms. You know, everything was remote during COVID-19. He said, Mr. Griffith, I'm Captain Enthusiasm, and I'm fired up, and I've learned the three branches of government. That's why when I'm telling you the things I've experienced with these kids with the spectrum disorder, and where they don't let the weaknesses get them, they do what they push the other ones. This right here,
Mr. Gregory, before you share your story, Mr. Gregory, let me just step in here for a teachable moment, because I'll be remiss if I didn't say.
Please.
One of the reasons why Ricky 2 is the person he is because of the identity that he's formed. And part of that is people first language. So we always honor Ricky 2 first, and then any other characteristics we say later. So for instance, I never refer to him as an autistic child. He is an individual on the autism spectrum, because he has a myriad of things that make him wonderful. In addition to, we don't subscribe to words like deficit, because everything that we do from a strength-based perspective is where he is now and where we want him to be next. And so when I speak with educators and when I go and I talk to service providers and families, a part of loving and caring for children well is also calling them by names that give them dignity and gives them greatness that they can grow into. When we speak about, like, instead of saying that something was wrong with him, I'll say that there was areas where we needed to look closer so that we could find the things that he needed to be successful. So now in Ricky 2's brain, because he's had a mother who has spoken strength-based language since the onset of his development, he sees himself as capable. The other thing that does is that puts him in a position now that he's in college, that he's able to advocate for himself, because he doesn't see not knowing something as a deficit. He sees it as an opportunity to learn something that he has not yet procured.
Mindset. It's mindset. And mommy, thank you. Thank you for the blueprint, mommy. Thank you. And I know I'm used to using words like cognitive deficits, because in reality, when you do go out and take all of those tests that you take and look at the bell curve and everything that we all know about, they'll say, well, Johnny or Billy or whoever got this amount of cognitive deficits away from the bell curve. But you know something? I love what you just said. And when you did correctly say you don't look at the deficits, you accentuate the positives. It speaks volumes to where he is, because so many people do just the opposite. They weigh in on the areas where there are weaknesses, and they don't understand.
But see,
he or she just doesn't have that.
Has been coded in us, because even if you look at the IEP documents now, it will say strengths and areas of improvement. So rather than saying words like deficit, a deficit is essentially an area that a child could benefit from improvement. And the way I teach this to educators, I say that when we think of telling someone what we want for a child to get them to the next level, think of it like a GPS. So if you have a car's GPS and you get in your car and let's say you want to go to Tallahassee, you don't say, don't take me to Tampa. You tell them where you want to go. You don't focus on the things that aren't there yet. You're like, I want to go to Tallahassee. Then GPS, that then is what we call an objective. That's your objective, what you just told your GPS. Now, everything that your GPS does to get you there, that's the curriculum. So the GPS may say drive 30 miles on here. If you turn around to say recalculating, that's when we're doing our formative assessment and we're differentiating. We're changing our pathway so that we can get that child to their destination. And when your GPS says, I have arrived, then that is your outcome. So when we situate that, when we're talking about children, especially to families, because you have to remember that families aren't coming from a clinical space, they're coming from an emotional space. They're tied to. So our language makes a difference. With that, when we speak to families, let's say we have a child who isn't yet reading. So you can't tell a parent, your child can't read, because that doesn't give them information to get their
Mhm.
child to the next level. We know as educators, there are four parts when it comes to reading. First, we have phonemic awareness. That's when you recognize letters and you recognize sounds and you get to
Yes.
decode. That's when you
Yeah.
put those sounds together to make words. And
Yes.
then you have what we call fluency, when you put those words together from capital letter to punctuation. And
Yes.
lastly, we have comprehension. That's when you
Correct.
understand the words to understand the meaning that the author is trying to convey. With that, if I am then telling a parent that the child is not yet reading and I'm working in a Head Start classroom, I'll say, Johnny knows 7 of the 26 letters in the alphabet. We would like Johnny to know 13. What I'm
Correct.
doing in the classroom currently is I'm working with Johnny in an area to help him understand his letter sounds. I would really appreciate it if you could use these cards that I've made you to focus on those other 6 letters. And we would like to get Johnny there in about 4 weeks. So what you've done, you've quantified what's going
Yes.
on. Hey, this is where he is. What is
Mhm.
the next logical step? The next logical step is not reading. The next logical step is knowing more letters so that you can understand the phonemic awareness so you can get to the decoding. So all I'm asking educators to do is just to break it down so that we
Yeah.
can partner with families. So
Scaffold, as they call it, right? Chunks. Yes.
you take
Yes.
it away as their capacity increases. But one of the things, language is so important, which is why I work engagement, because I don't care how great your message is. If the words you say cause the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up, I'm no
Mhm.
longer listening. So I
Yes.
want as service providers to be able to get that high quality information to families with as few barriers to understanding and acceptance as possible.
Wow. Let me tell you something. We need more of you. When is your next book coming out on this whole process? First off, let me go back and back up a minute so that people understand, because I do. When you mentioned IEP and you just kept going,
Hmm.
see, IEP is an individualized education program, and
Hmm.
every kid that's been diagnosed with some sort of disability or somewhere there's an area of concern, they're given, and we don't like using the words label either, but they're diagnosed and they're placed in a program based on
Hmm.
scores and assessment. And that individualized education program is so, the way you broke that down, I've never ever heard it. Just, I mean, the way you micromanage the entire thing is just incredible. I know why you're a doctor. I understand even clearly now why we need more of your voice for
Boom.
those that are disabled, those who are struggling in areas where they know there's a concern. But like you said, it's just enhancing where the strengths are and not putting any area of any energy in those places you want to call dark. And now you even got me to the point now I don't even want to use the word when I'm talking about anyone in the arena of disabilities, the word deficit ever again,
Yeah.
because of the way that you just explained, and it's so clear. And you know, here's the point I want to make. And my wife walked over. She brought this little fellow up, and
Hmm.
and this little guy was the activator, and you couldn't see him or hear me, but Gregory came on my, what do you call, COVID-19 sessions we were having. In other words, remote learning. We did it for what, 3 or 4 months or more.
Hmm.
He showed up one day with a puppet and he challenged me. He said, "You know what, Mr. G, I got all three of the branches down." And what I did, I walked off that day. I said, now to get him more engaged, I'm gonna have to do something. I was walking around and my wife walked in with this.
Boom.
And he was Captain Enthusiasm. I was the activator. So I would just give him questions. What is the legislative branch? What is the executive branch? Who's in there? The president. I mean, what is the judicial branch? Well, that's the judges. And he was just phenomenal. And he
Mhm.
knew every single thing about
Mhm.
every single branch. And one thing about Gregory that I'll say to this day, and you're another example of it, Dr. Loving parents who never ever looked at what he didn't have, what he did have, what he was capable of. And when that kid And he just went out and got that puppet and told me, I want to do a skit with you. And he didn't know I was going to go out and get a puppet. So we started doing classes. I actually, one day I found a little segment of it. I'm going to text it over to you.
Yeah.
You're going to fall out.
Used to do he
You,
used to carry puppets with him because one of the characteristics of autism spectrum disorder is an attachment to inanimate objects. So
mm-hmm.
he always carries a comfort item with him. And for many years, probably about 2 years, the
Okay.
the sticks, we would take them with us everywhere we went, and he did puppet shows and the like. But one of the things I really want to touch on, that you used the
Huh.
word label earlier, and since we're here, and for your listeners, I want to offer a reframe of that.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, when parents come in and they are speaking with me, they are concerned about their children receiving labels. And one of the
Yes.
things I've helped to reframe that from a strength based perspective is that a diagnosis gives you access to things that will move your child forward. So
Mm-hmm.
rather than think of them as a label, think of them as access to resources.
Uh-huh.
Resources that weren't available to you before are now available to you. Safeguards
Yes.
that weren't available to you before are
Yeah.
now available to you. And that's what I talk,
Yes.
getting comfortable saying the word disabilities, because being an individual with disabilities put you in a protected class, and you need that when advocating. They're not giving me things for Ricky too and accommodations because he's a super kid, or he's my number one stunner, or whatever name you want to give someone, rather than saying disabilities. When I walk into that room and say
Yes.
my son is an individual with disabilities, the game changes. So when you get to a point where you can accept that thing that we call labels, which really is a key to open doors to access,
Mm-hmm.
especially for Black and Brown parents, because
Mm.
there are larger communities that are benefiting from these services because they've gotten past the idea, the stigma of labels, and they're like, wait, what helps my child? Give me some more of that. And that's where I want to see us get as a community.
Oh, I love what you just said. What helps my child? Give me some more of that. Because what's happening, and let's face it, they're just not getting enough of what helps them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the unfortunate part of this. Just like when I was there, you and I both bringing up Head Start again. And the way they were just trying to cut the program, trying to do just through the DEI, eliminations, just and still, I guess some of the monies were still cut, but you still ask yourself the question, that giant question, like I asked you, why?
Why?
Why? Why tap into programs where there's those who can't even take care of themselves? They need it. It's not. It's a no-brainer. Why do you even address anything about removing? How about adding on?
Well, Mr. Griffith, when I think about that, that takes me right into the little acorn story.
Uh huh.
More so than one of the things that we learn, when you're researching and such, is that there's always the question of so what? So what? Why should we care? When we think about things from a longitudinal standpoint, the children who are in our classrooms today will be the people who will be leading our country tomorrow. Head Start serves over 700,000 children per year. That's a lot of human resources. That's
Yes.
a lot of leaders. That's a lot of policymakers. That's your doctors. That's your son-in-laws, your daughter-in-laws. Those are the people who are going to determine your quality of life in the future.
Yes.
Um, why do we invest in our children? Because we want to improve our quality of life as older people.
That's right.
So when we think about this funding, oftentimes we think about, again, that's deficit speak, people who cannot take care of themselves. When, one can argue that there's systemic factors that have people in a position of what we call the working poor, working 70 plus hours per week and still unable to pay all of their bills. That's not really poverty, that's economics. We've priced out with housing, we've priced out with food. You can't work the same job and have the same standard of living that you could many years ago.
Yep.
So, how do we change that? How do we get back to a place of homeostasis, a place of normalcy, a place of
Mm,
comfort?
mm.
The way we do that is by investing in our children and teaching our children the collective mindset, teaching our children what it's like to to work in a world where you are valued and you see value in others. You know, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, and that's why we should invest in children.
So well spoken. You are speaking so much truth tonight. Boy, I'm so glad we went off this line and came back on, because if they would have missed this on YouTube, I would have been pissed off. I, I mean, I mean, for lack of a better word, I would have been sadly disappointed, because what you just shared will be for the times. It's priceless, and you know, fortunate for me, my son was gifted too, but he didn't have any labels on it. But they put one on him, called him gifted.
Mhm.
An athlete. If he walked through the door now, he looks like an NBA superstar, and
Mhm.
that's my youngest son. My oldest son, Greg Jr. Both my sons, in other words, are all right. They're out of college.
Mhm.
They've adjusted. They've married some wonderful, beautiful women.
Right.
I got a beautiful granddaughter, so I can say that on my side of the coin, and I do know that was my greatest motivator, my deprivation. What I witnessed when I was a 6-year-old and my brother
Mhm.
went to college. What I
Mhm.
witnessed that you're speaking about right now. When I reminisce back to my days in elementary school,
Mhm.
when there was not even air conditioning, or there was
Mhm.
the big old hot fan in the window, there wasn't
Mhm.
even no heat in the winter. When I reminisce back to, there are only so many of my teachers I can remember, but the ones who were against all odds. Because let's face it, we're educators. We never made a
Mhm.
fortune, but we made a difference. And that
Mhm.
is why to this day, I've always been a professional entertainer. I'm so blessed that I'm even still in the entertainment business. I
Mhm.
just give all glory to God. That's why I always talk about passion, purpose, and possibility. And I always realized when I had to take my pivot, I always realized that I found things I love to do, just like your son Ricky too. I know for the rest of his life, it's something gonna be music with him, or art,
Right.
because that's his etiology, that's his foundation, that's his blueprint, that's his
Mhm.
system. One of my mentors got an acronym for the word system. Save yourself time, energy, money, and an S, stress. Systems. And when you do have those systems and they're in place, especially when it comes to parenting, when it comes to your personal relationships, when it comes to what you do to make money in this world. See, one thing that's never going to change is that we live in a system of elasticity around supply and demand, the dollar. How far can we stretch it? What can we do when we don't have it? And what's so sad about what we're living with in real time right now in this country as we speak right now is that there just seems to be this blurred vision about what do we need and why can't we get it from our government. I get so you can hear me right now, the little anxiety of me rising up a little bit, because when I start to even talk about it, it's the truth, and it's the people look like us that we still have to struggle with to go through to get to it. We're all work in progress, you know. And I want to send a shout out to every teacher in this country, every teacher, every parent who may not be a certified educated teacher, but you are a teacher in your household. Your environment is where everything happens before they walk out, what I call it, the concrete jungle. You know what I mean? Out there in that external world, Dr. Brown, and what you've done, the way you've nurtured Ricky too. When I looked at your bio, then I looked at the story of Ricky, and I can still see him, that spread that he's got. And I realized, just listening to you, you are truly one of the very special ones. And I pray that for as you move forward into this year, into the next level, because there's another level for you. I mean, I don't know if you're writing another book, other than, or do you have books in the marketplace? Are you working on one? Because the framework, what you've just shared tonight, what we've been at this, what, 53 minutes seem like a few minutes. We already been at it about an hour. And I knew it would be like this with you and I. I knew that what your experience has been, what my experience has been, that correlates and can concur with you, can echo with you. You gave me chills here several times tonight. And I'm just so honored that our paths cross. And I know everyone has a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And Dr. L. Brown, I want to thank you for being with us tonight. I don't know if there are any questions that I missed that one I asked you about. I want to see if you can answer it. Are you thinking about a new book? Have you even thought about politics? Have you thought about expanding Kinder Jam? I mean, to another level? What? Talk to me, because you got too much going on over there. You can't keep that all to yourself.
Well, I just finished my last book last year, Raising Superman. So when you
Okay.
saw me speak and you hear me speak on the top-notch villages, that is a framework that is housed in that book. It's the Village Engagement Matrix. And it's
Uh-huh.
talking about how children develop, how service providers meet them at the various levels, and how they partner with parents in their development at the various levels of that. And I was able to do that because after I finished with the parenting of a child and my son entered adulthood, it gave me an opportunity to look back at all the decisions I made and saw how
Hmm.
those decisions and those partnerships helped shape and form his identity. So when I go and I'm speaking about the top notch villages and the acorn story, Ricky too is now my acorn. I was someone else's acorn. And I
Yes.
top-notch village to help me get my acorn from where he was when he fell from our oak to where he is now, a mighty oak himself. And I know, because one of the things that you touched on previously when you talked about your son being gifted and talented, um, when I was in Head Start, when the Head Start teacher said, she should be tested, yada, 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 I
Hmm.
received the category of gifted and talented, a
That's
talented.
right.
That were buffers for me. When I talked about how what we call labels are really access to resources. So
Yep.
if I moved 28 times from birth to the time I left for FAMU, at each school I went to, that paperwork would come and it would give me access to resources.
The
The
services.
same
Yes.
thing happens with my son, but with a different category. So he's in special education, but that diagnosis gave him access to resources. So when
That's
I
right.
walked schools and I advocated for him. It wasn't just L. Brown speaking, it was that medical diagnosis and all of the legal requirements that were entitled to him because of that diagnosis. So when we
That's
think
right.
about things as parents and as educators, what we need to do is really consider what would happen if we destigmatize the things that actually help people, so we don't make people feel like they're struggling because they need help. You're just someone who needs help in this area. And once you have it, you've mastered it. So there's nothing wrong with not knowing, there's nothing wrong with needing help.
Wow, you just said a mouthful. And I mentioned Andy Allen early before we had the technical glitch and got back online. And I asked you about Best Buddies because one thing that I learned is that program making inclusion
Mhm,
such a non-negotiable. In my last high school, I spent my last 11 years at West Broward High School in Broward County, Florida, the sixth largest
mhm,
school district in the country.
mhm,
But one thing I witnessed there, because prior to that, I was at another high school that was another great high school, but Best Buddies was almost
mhm,
non-existent.
mhm,
And then when I realized that this organization matters. When a kid can find someone who's a gen ed kid and a special ed kid, and they become as one, there are students who are even right now graduating college who come back and find these kids and hang out with them. And the one thing I'm bringing up right now, because social interpersonal skills, when it comes to the populations we're discussing, has always been an issue. It always has been. I worked a program called the PASS program, PASS, Post Alternative Secondary Schools. And one of the hardest parts for me in that program was when I went in the community, Dr. Brown, and I had the responsibility for those that were disabled to advocate for them for employment purposes.
mhm,
And oh
mhm,
boy, maybe 1 out of 20 let me through the door. And 1 out of 20 said yes. And every time I found a yes somewhere, it would be a scenario around somebody in that family had been through what I was there selling them to do, that you will be. Do you know there are kids who I've gotten jobs for 15, 20 years ago who are still in some of those public supermarkets, who are still working in some of these warehouses and places where I got them jobs. They are the most loyal people you could ever imagine. And what a lot of people done, and you and I talking about it, they draw a negative paradigm. They have all these things that are not really real about the capabilities that children who are disabled are still capable of, because once they master something, and this Best Buddies program would work with kids who needed to speak a little clearer, who needed to dress a little better, who needed to be told that you're still all right, and I still like you just the way you are, and that you do matter, and that your story matters. Back to Michelle Obama, who says that every time you hear her talking. And when I learned that, and when I realized that this school I was in had the #1 program in our county for the last 4 or 5. Matter of fact, I've been out of school system 3 years, and it's still #1 because of what we're talking about. People like you who recognize that their son and daughter, and I love that. I will never ever say deficits in the conversation of disabled again, because you are so right about, it's not about that. It's about what they do have. And when they buddy with someone, and man, let me tell you something. They invited me to be the keynote speaker, Best Buddies, for their annual gala. And I got to see the entire cohort of Florida come together from West Palm Beach, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, all of these kids, their parents, all of the fundraisers, and everybody under one umbrella. And man, when you realize when somebody just says yes, they don't turn the other cheek away, like when I had to go to 20 people to get one to say yes back in my day. And let me tell you something, it's not easy. And that's why I say we need more people like you who will advocate, who will be a global advocate for what's out there. Because once you get these kids and you get to know them, like a Gregory, who I showed you my puppet, and they can just really take it to the next level, man, you got the most loyal person. And I'm sure your Ricky too is the same way. I'm sure once he finishes FAMU and finds somewhere where his little light under the sun shines, your son will be something to scream about. I know, Mom, I know you're going to be so well, I know you already are, but just imagine the next level with the foundation that you've given him. So I'm going to put that on this tonight. I want to know, how do people contact you? I want to know, can we get you to take the floor? You got the last word. How do they contact you? What's your website? What's your social media? You did say you got a new book coming. When will it be released? And I asked you one question. Wait a minute, before you answer all that, had you ever thought about politics at all?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Your voice is powerful.
Oh, well, I think I'm a thought leader and I'm a thought partner. So I bring ideas into the room and I offer people a different way of looking at things. And my
But
book
you're a game changer, Dr. L. Brown.
Okay.
Dr. L. Brown, you are a game changer. Game changers should impact the masses. Game changers can micromanage and do things like, and they can do this and do that in the classroom. And, that's why some game changers become principals. Some become administrators, become superintendents. I think there's a light that's so bright for you. I don't want to know if I can't make you do anything, but I would like for you to possibly, because of what you've done, what you are, what I saw with my 2 eyes, what I saw in that room, what I saw, the impact that you had, and everybody in that room will never ever forget your story of Ricky Toole. They won't forget what you had to go through to get to. They won't forget that you still refuse to accept no. And that's what we need. We need more of that. And I don't know if you want to start in Tallahassee. I don't know where you want to be. I don't know how, but you know something. And I'm not trying to shove you into a corner and come out scratching like a cat. I'm saying realistically that, boy, you're a powerful sister on this Black History Month. You're something to reckon with.
Well, thank you. I received that.
Yes,
In the
please.
spirit of honesty, Ricky too is my main job, and he's been my main gig for 19 years. When he finishes FAMU, then I may explore other options. Right now, my role is to support him here in Tallahassee and crisscross this country, spreading the message of little acorns, which is potential for greatness.
Well, you see it right there. There it is. That's the 5-year-old Dr. L. Brown. And who would imagine? I was gonna do this to you. They don't need to see my face. They need to see little old Dr. L. Brown. And whoever would imagine? Who would imagine? You know, I read Psalm 91 every day. And when people see me a lot, I think you saw it on a couple of my reels. I wear this hat that TD Jakes gave me. And I know I can feel your spirit. I know you grounded. Because nothing but the grace of God could endure when somebody gave you something that wasn't correctly a diagnosis about your son. You didn't accept it. You decided to go out there and do what you do. They can't stop you. Maybe I'll talk to you in 3 to 5 years from now. I still might come to you and say, let's do this, because your voice matters. Your story matters. I appreciate you, man. And you know, when your son graduates college, I'm going to be knocking on that door, because see, by then, they're going to get the rest of the story. So ladies and gentlemen, she's out tonight. Go ahead while the music playing. Tell them where to get you. What's your social media? What's your website? What's up with Kinder Jam? When will that new book be done? Go ahead and talk to them.
So my website is kinderjam.com. That's where service providers and agencies can find me to come and partner with your agency. Families can find me on Facebook at L Brown. That's where I share reflections daily about life with Ricky too. And there are always tidbits in there. I call it leaving breadcrumbs and the door open, so that other people can find their way.
So on Facebook, L Brown, you're on Instagram also.
I am on Instagram. It's just L Brown. But in all honesty, my viewership there is usually males between the age of 18 and 24 who are watching Ricky too. But Facebook is where I meet and talk with families and agencies.
Yes. And kinderjam.com if they want your services, right? Kinderjam.com. This woman's framework, she has a system.
Boom.
She has a blueprint, and she can quantify it, that is no lie. So I had to stop the music to make sure they could hear you clearly. All you've got to remember is kinderjam.com, and everything you need to know about her is there, from her humble beginnings to where she is right now. I'm so glad our paths crossed tonight. I thank you so much. I feel honored that you said, I want to stop and give Gregory some of my precious 24/7, 168 a week. You carved in, what is it right now? 1 hour and 6 minutes tonight. So with that said, we're out. I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. You be blessed. I'll tell you, boy, I knew you would be like this tonight. Dr. L. Brown, Global Ambassador, Global Advocate. She is the one. Remember, kinderjam.com